Hey Wizards, Battleblood here. I'm back from a long break. This is going to be another questions and answers, obviously, and I think I'll cut straight to the chase and save my updates for a vlog or something. So here we go. How do you destroy treasures? And I think he means treasure cards. Well, you can do this by pressing P on your keyboard, which opens up the card menu, as we call it, and then you'll want to right-click the certain types of cards that you don't want. And of course you have to be in the treasure card column. So if you click on the golden cards icon at the top right, you should see your list of treasure cards. You can just scroll through them, and when you right click them, it'll pop up a prompt window and ask, do you want to delete this or decline? So that way you don't accidentally delete cards that you were meaning to keep. Next question is from CocaColaProductionz, and he asked a really good question. How did you find your team? Because I'm looking to make or join a team for 4v4, and I mean I thought of it in two different contexts. First one is how did I find a team like Perfect Catch, or how do you make a team, a 4v4 team? Just go to your group of friends. Or strangers even, and just play together often, kind of learn each other's strengths and weaknesses and get to know each other and become familiar with what kind of play styles you guys have. Well, if you're actually asking, how do you make a team like Perfect Catch, where, we're playing on a consistent basis and that we're always, around and just basically really determined, then you kind of have to go a little bit deeper. There are a few keys that will make a successful and solid team that you should remember. And you can call this the 3 C's, the 4 C's, or whatever C's that there are. But the 3 different items are consistency, commitment or cohesion, and character. What I mean by consistency is it doesn't mean that you play the same exact way over and over. That's a different context. Instead, what I mean is that you and your teammate should not vary too often. For example, if you have a team that's made up of, like say 5 or 6 or even 7 people, in a competitive gaming environment, sometimes that leads to misunderstanding through judgment or favoritism. For example, someone on the sidelines watching a team play can sometimes feel obligated, to either prove their worth or prove that they are part of this team. And sometimes they expect that they have to perform in this on some kind of standard that exists. For example, if this team is prone to winning, then if you hop onto the team and you're not finding as many wins as possible, then you're going to take it very personally. You're going to feel as if you're the problem, when instead there's a bunch of other factors that are out there that could affect your team's performance. But I mean, if you're always changing teammates in and out, you're really not going to know where your strengths and weaknesses are. Commitment and or cohesion doesn't mean that you're just restricted to playing with only your team. You can go out and play with others too, but when you're creating this team, you kind of have to stick to it like glue. It just means that no matter the circumstances, you and your teammates will stick together. Whether you win or whether you lose, you're still a team. You still represent each other, whether you're playing well or you're playing poorly. Just because one person messed up, it doesn't mean that the other 3 did something right. But at the same time, you can say the entire team just messed up alone. No one takes full responsibility for whether it's a successful match or a failure. When you're committed to your team, you should be able to endure any personal flaws that you or your teammates may have. Whether for example, like it could be a sloppy time schedule where someone doesn't show up all the time, or there could be some emotional issues, or just sometimes you might have misunderstandings and whatnot. So instead of constantly PvPing, you have to develop some kind of bond with your teammates, and that means maybe take some time and go farm, talk to each other, be open and honest. It's okay to admit that you have flaws or personal mistakes. I mean, when you do that, it shows to your teammates that, wow, this person's mature, that they're honest, and that they care enough about this team to inform us ahead of time of what they might find. That way they're not. That way your teammates are not thinking, "Wow, I had no idea that this was in this person." So, you don't ever want to let your teammates find out the hard way, a personal flaw about yourself. And I think I think between our group and TPC, we've done that a couple of times where it's like, "Oh, we didn't know that," or some kind of reaction that we've had surprised other teammates. So, but luckily, we're all adults in this environment, and we're kind of understanding, and so we have it a little bit easier. Whereas if you're a little bit younger, like under 18 years old, and you're trying to build a team with other minors, it might be a little difficult because of that lack of maturity. But there are some mature players out there, so just because they're underage, it doesn't mean that they're automatically immature. It's just a little bit harder to, basically have a cultural and humane understanding of others. And then stick together enough, that sensitive information that you share about one another, when you're sharing your personal flaws or your background and whatnot, just keep it in that group. Everything that's mentioned here stays in here. And again, I mean, that takes a big deal of trust, but that's exactly what cohesion is. Because when you can trust your teammates outside of PvP, you can trust them within. And when you have a lot of trust when you're dueling or battling it out, it helps because then there's less hesitation. For example, if you know someone's good at making quick decisions, you're obviously going to trust them a lot more if you understand that about them before jumping into PvP rather than jumping into PvP and not knowing anything about that person. Then you're going to have to doubt and kind of question and wonder, should I really want to do this move? Nah, I'm going to do this move instead. And then it can basically ruin the entire plan that you had for that turn. So again, trust and just understanding is really important. To have a strong friendship with your teammates is one of those keys. And then character is basically another word for attitude, which my band teacher had taught me in high school was everything. Sportsmanship, integrity, honor, and self-respect is required among all your teammates. Now, I know that these words can be a little vague or ambiguous, so I'll try to break it down as best as possible in terms of my perspective on what they are. I believe that sportsmanship means that you play, that whatever competitive event you're doing, you're playing for the existence of a fair and enjoyable game, but not for what the outcome is. So it's not about winning or losing, but it's about how you win or how you lose. If we define sportsmanship as a strict definition, as always saying GG, then I kind of have to admit I've broken that rule a couple of times because I don't view every single battle as a good one. For example, let's say that a team prevents you from ever casting a card whatsoever. For example, chain stunners in the past, or people who like to stack on the 40 and 45 smokes. Then, it's basically a game didn't really exist. You kind of just went in there and got slaughtered without even being given a chance, which is not fun for anyone. That just that was never not able to show any kind of comebacks or skills whatsoever. So that's why sometimes, that's why I always say, try to say GG at the end of every match, even if you lose. But at the same time, there's a little gray area with that, and it's how you lost. And if it's like you were never able to cast a card, or your team was not able to play more than 4 cards in a match, then most of the time that isn't a sportsmanship game, but rather, again, like what I said, a slaughter almost. So sportsmanship, is basically how they behave before, during, and after that match itself. So let's move on to integrity. Having integrity means that you uphold this sportsmanship even when no one is looking. Whether you're on an alternate account or another character, it doesn't mean that you just go ahead and that it's okay to break rules and stuff. You have to be able to be consistent in your personality, or at least your attitude. Just because, you're not being watched and whatnot, doesn't mean it's okay to be unsportsmanlike. And then that leads up to honor, which suggests that you treat each battle like there was no cheating or unsportsmanlike conduct, if there wasn't. So, even if you're being tempest spammed, or being smoke stacked, or losing to other broken strategies, honor basically prevents you from dropping down to that level and playing those same kind of dirty tactics that you thought was unfair. I mean, that's what drove TPC itself to create those pigs with storm resistance, or at least basically the proof and storm shield, tower shield, sprightly pigs. Whereas a lot of wizards, when they lost to Tempest spamming, they jumped off of their ice wizards and made storm wizards all of a sudden, and that's why we saw a plethora of them instead. So since we didn't build our own Tempest team, I think that is a solid example of what honor is. It is trying to keep PvP fun, even if others in the majority are not. That, in a way, is self-respect, just by upholding honor itself. The four of you can actually play comfortably, knowing that your style is not controversial or questionable or hated even. So that gives something for you and your team to kind of be proud of, and therefore you have a stronger bond altogether. Your team is going to be solid and won't break apart or anything. So overall, a team that is understanding, is truthful, and is happy with itself is basically a team that'll be hard to break. The only thing I have to let you know is that it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, and basically a lot of trust in order to reach that kind of state, and just this actually applies to real life, believe it or not, because real friendships and relationships don't appear out of thin air, or real good ones at least. It always takes a lot of work to create them and maintain them. So keep that in mind, and good luck with you and your team. Hope that hope maybe that covered a little bit too much and is overkill, but that's just to answer, what Perfect Catch has become and what we've been conscious about. So next question is from Mega Drummer Boy 100. How do you take away the quest helper? Because I'm done with the world so far, and it's just really annoying to me right now. What you need to do is hold down Control button on your keyboard and press T, I believe. What that would do is remove the quest arrow from appearing, and then if you need it to appear again, you can either use the same hotkey, Control T, or there's another way. You can go open up your spellbook using the escape key, and this opens up the options menu, and you click on one of those tabs up there, and it'll say something about quest direction or quest helper, and then you can enable or disable that. So that's just to get rid of that arrow for you. Thanks for the question. Next question from happykidification. Hey Kevin, I hope you have a great time with Icy Hot. My question is, do you think it's disappointing that we still don't get to fight Morganthe in Wizard101? Well, happykidification, thanks. I had a great time with ICH, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a vlog or so. But to answer your question, I honestly think it's a I think it's a relief that we're not fighting Morganthe just yet. I mean, if you consider the Malastare storyline, where it encompasses Wizard City, Crocotopia, Marleybone, Mushu, and Dragonspire. And so it took about 5 different worlds, with 5 different cultures and interconnected stories before you could see the lengths and the resources and grasp an understanding about what Malastare had to use and go through and what he was capable of in order to carry out his overall mission. So as far as Morganthe goes, we still don't have an understanding of how Merle Ambrose is connected with Morganthe. And there are some parts in the story, or at least some of the update notes that King's Hour releases, that Merle has, or Professor Ambrose has some kind of connection with Morganthe. There's some kind of bond between them in the past, and we don't know what that is just yet. We also don't know where exactly the Weavers are coming from, what kind of world, or was it created by Morganthe herself? and then we don't know her overall plan for, just messing things up out there. Is she after power? Is she after domination? We don't really understand everything about that yet. And then again, so far all we have is Celestia and Zafaria, and these are our clues to, what's coming up next. So there's tons of worlds to be discovered. I think maybe another three worlds, and two of them happen to be mentioned, which are named Polaris and Mirage, through some of the NPCs' dialogue. So I'm personally excited. There's going to be more content. The spiral's just going to keep expanding for us. There'll be tons of places to farm or battle, and tons of new features that are coming. So I'm kind of glad that Morganthe has not come up yet. And had she shown up in Safari, and that was the story we're fighting for, then they're gonna have to create like yet another villain, because I don't think the spiral is just ready to be concluded just yet, and I don't think it ever will. I think that there's going to be a continuing storyline over and over, and KI has even mentioned that the Malister might even make a comeback. We don't know if he's going to be good or evil, but whatever he's coming back for, that's another story to read about later on. So, but really great and thought-provoking questions, so thank you. Next question is from thePRECASO. Sorry I butchered that name. What do you think of Wizard101 characters that played by the opposite gender? For example, a real-life male playing a female character. I thought about it, and it started to bother me, and some of you even admitted they were doing such a thing. If you have any advice about this, that would be great. I understand it's not a huge deal, but it's just something that has been bothering me lately. That's a really, really great question. I'm surprised that even showed up at all. And so I would really like to answer this one. It's kind of an interesting thought altogether. For example, take a look at the past, where if you were a girl that liked to game, you had to play as Mario or Sonic or Link, Star Fox, Paperboy, Pac-Man, and all these other cliche knights in shining armor or overalls or fur or whatever you have on. It took a while before female characters were developed, like Samus Aran from Metroid or Lara Croft from Tomb Raider. And because of that shift of the audience, where video game industries or companies are realizing, hey, girls are wanting to play this. For a while, girls actually did have to play as male characters, but I don't think that really impacted how they felt about the game. I don't think it really changed the game's enjoyment. So I think it's pretty commonplace and very natural that a lot of people have what I call counter-gender characters, where males will play female characters and females will play male characters. But of course, when we're talking about MMORPGs like Wizard101, the context is a little bit different, because they actually give you a choice between the genders. However, I don't think it should matter who's behind the computer screen, since I'm pretty sure none of us are like the characters that we play. For example, I'm not a preteen. I'm in college, but I'm playing as a child wizard in Wizard101. Not that I act like a child, but my character is one. So that's a little, unrealistic in a way when you're comparing me and Kevin Battleblood. And then my teammates Fallon and Cassandra are one of the many mothers out there that play the same game. But, they play as little girls with pigtails or, whatever they've got on. And then if you look at World of Warcraft, people aren't, orcs or Tauren. So, going back to the definition of MMORPG, they're called role-playing games. That suggests that we're available to be whatever we want to be, within the boundaries of that game. So some males just probably like playing as females, and some females like playing as males. Either to maybe emulate someone from their own imagination, For some, maybe a girl wants to control a character that is like Legolas from Lord of the Rings. So maybe, and because Legolas is not a female, it doesn't mean that there's anything weird about that. Maybe she just wants to be able to have a character that looks like him and moves like him, etc. And then on the other hand, there are actually some serious reasons out there why some people will play their counter genders. I learned this through meeting some people in Guild Wars, where some of the women on there, and this is back in 2005, but some of the women on there were just tired of being flirted with, or sexist or harassing comments when they were on their female characters. Some girls, or even some women, want to play on the male characters, so they're kind of left alone. I mean, we come on this game to enjoy it, not to get harassed or talked down on. And so sometimes they'll play that male character so they feel, or at least so then the reception is a lot different. Sadly, some people treat different genders in different ways. Like, guys tend to be more competitive with each other and tend to be nicer to the female characters, and female characters may tend to be competitive with other females and nicer to male characters. You can create a giant matrix to see what kind of personalities are unleashed in front of different genders, but that's another lecture for a professor to give you someday if you're interested in social roles. But the only thing that would kind of bother me is if someone lied to me about who they really were. Let's say that a real male who behaves like a male and is proud that he's a male and walks outside and is a male and whatnot. I mean, if he's gonna play a girl character and claim that he's a girl behind the computer screen, that can be a little bothering. That can be a little annoying, even. I mean, I'm pretty sure it could be because of those serious reasons that I brought up, where someone just wants to be treated differently than they were if they played their normal gender. But I mean, if they're just kind of deceiving me purposefully, then yeah, that's the only reason why I would be bothered with someone doing that. But other than that, I'm just perfectly fine with counter gender players, and I think everyone kind of should be too, as long as there isn't the purposeful deception thing going on. So hopefully that kind of, I don't know, open up some windows in your case, and if not, just send me a message again and dig a little deeper if you want. So anyways, last but not least, Kevin, do you think any schools have a greater advantage in PvP because of the world? Personally, I think fire has become a greater threat, because fire is basically like Snow Angel now, where the initial damage is very tiny compared to the overall damage, which basically means that you can have a DOT that breaks shields well now. And I actually did a little mathematical comparison, where if a player has just one shield in front of them, then Rain of Fire is the best move to make, or the best spell to throw out against that. If they happen to have more than 2 shields, Scald tends to be a little bit better, and if they have no shields whatsoever, Dragon, damage per pip wise, would be much better to throw out. But I'm not going to get into the whole math thing of that. But I just think that, before, Snow Angel was the best spell to kind of have, which is why we had a lot of, Blade Second teams where there were like 4 or 3 ices that would stack on a lot of blades and send that spell out. Whereas Fire didn't have that advantage, even though it's the damage over time school. And the reason for that is because on Fire Dragon, most of the initial attack is the bulk of that damage. So if that went into a shield, then basically the DOT, or the residual damage as they call it, is kind of worthless. Just spinning around, break other shields. But if you're using Fire Dragon just for damage and there are shields around, not a good idea. So now that they have Rain of Fire, I think they're on top of other schools at this point. But then again, I don't want to make it a final statement because we haven't even seen level 70 gear yet. So we can't really say for sure until that happens. Alright, so thanks for your question, guys. I hope I've helped out a little bit, if not everyone. And go ahead and just send me either private messages on YouTube or post a comment on any video, and I'll be sure to like collect questions that I think are important in answering. You can always check out more stuff on the blog. I know I haven't posted there that often, but I'll try to work on that again. And we'll be seeing TPC 2.0 very, very soon. So hang in there if you're waiting for that. So anyways, have a great day, guys, and we'll see you in the spiral. Peace.